Hello, listeners. If you've enjoyed these narrations, please click on that like and subscribe button. The pandemic had hit quite hard on me, as I had lost my job working at the local shops, and the store having to lay off 30% of their staff. I was one of the unlucky few picked. I wasn't lucky finding any job, as most had closed, and were families that were not willing to take on a 20-year-old dropout student who never finished. I survived by doing unsavory entertainment for businessmen and strangers. I don't enjoy it, so I won't discuss the unsavory work, and it doesn't even pay that well. There's no harm living with your mother for a bit. How long can this pandemic be? Like what, 3 months at least? I'll be able to find a better job by then. I thought to myself. Boy, I was naive. A year into the pandemic, and money was getting very thin, and food prices were through the roof. Someday, my mother and I only had bread and butter to eat. Not to mention, my mother's declining health and chemo made it even harder on us. The pills she needed were quite expensive, and most of our money was going towards it, but as of late, we couldn't even afford paying for those. Now you're wondering, when do I start my night shift at the factory? Well, while I was prowling the street looking for potential customers, I came across a man standing alone under a street lamp. Now I know what most people are going to say is don't go over there, that's going to get yourself killed. But I desperately needed the money. I walked up to the man and I gave him a gentle tap. The stranger turned around and looked at me with the coldest stare I've ever seen. He then spoke in a gentle but gruff tone. "Is there anything I can help you with, ma'am?" "I'm looking for some work and wondering if you'd like to go beyond that alley and I could show you a good time," I replied hesitantly. You never know what customers you're going to deal with. I ran into a few bad apples and was hospitalized, but that's a story for another time. He looked me up and down, and then sighed. "No, ma'am, I'm not interested tonight." "Please, sir, I need the money. My mother's in dire need of treatment and—" He cut me off. "Look, ma'am, I'm not interested, but I can offer you a job working for me." I was shocked. It's been nearly 2 years since I applied for a job, so naturally I accepted on the spot. "What's the job?" I inquired. He looked at me and gave me a note. Now that should have raised even more red flags, but at the time I was desperate and didn't care. I finally had an opportunity to earn decent money and afford medication for my mother. After he handed me the note, I looked and gasped. It was $40 an hour, a 12-hour shift from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. "Sir, are you pulling my leg?" I bolted up with excitement, not even trying to contain it. He looked at me. "You start tomorrow. Don't be late. Everything will be covered on orientation, so please don't ask and save them for tomorrow." "Yes, sir," I said while I walked off. What a lucky night, I thought to myself. Mother would be so pleased. I got home around midnight, not making any money, but you can't blame a girl who just got offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I got home and announced to my mother that I got hired by a company. She was a little skeptical at first. "Do you even know what company you're working for, dear?" my mother inquired. "He said he would explain everything to me tomorrow," I shot back. Mother gave me the coldest stare, like I've made the dumbest decision of my life. I couldn't blame her. I wasn't actually the brightest when it come to big decisions like this. She always said I was ahead first. "But Mom, we could finally live comfortably and pay for our medication," I retorted. She didn't even reply, as she had collapsed and was asleep. The cancer had taken a lot from her, and it badly drained her to do the most menial things. I just kissed my mother on the forehead and turned the lights off. "Tomorrow, Everything's gonna be for the best. I promise, Mom." As I whispered, I closed the door. The next day came across, and I ran down to greet my mother, who was sitting on the couch watching TV. "Mother, I'm off to work." She lifted a finger to indicate she heard me. As I opened the door, I was greeted by a black sedan waiting for me on the parkway. Strangely, I walked up to the car and the dark tinted windows rolled down, and I was greeted by the same man I met last night. Hello?" I asked shakily. "Hello, Miss Alex. Please get in. There was a slight change, so I'm picking you up, if that's all right." How did you find my address? And how do you know my name?" "Please, get in. All questions can be answered at the warehouse," as he waved me in. Now, being a bit skeptical, I hopped in the car and we drove off. We passed houses and streets that I've never seen before, and street names I couldn't even pronounce. I looked at the man and wondered if I had made a horrible mistake in accepting this job offer. I sat in silence, dozing off, when suddenly the car jerked to a screeching stop. "We're here," the man pronounced with a grumpy and tired tone. I got out of the car and looked around my new surroundings. It looked like your ordinary mega warehouse, but the oddest thing was there was no company logo anywhere to be seen. "Follow me, please," the man asked. "You'll be working alongside Abby, who takes over after you completed your shift. But for now, she'll be working with you to catch you up on how things work here." He led me up a flight of stairs, where I was greeted by an energetic and outgoing young woman around my age. "Hi, you must be the new guard. I'm Abby. I'll be going through basic training and what to watch for." I nodded in agreement. The man had already left us and was long gone. "Perfect. Now, do you know how the basics of a gun works, Alex?" Abby asked. I nodded again. "Well, good. You gotta know the thing out there are very territorial and dangerous down there." I looked at her in confusion. She must be guessing by the expression on my face. "The mannequins. They're very territorial about the area and hate any intruders." I looked puzzled, trying to comprehend what Abby was saying about the mannequins coming to life. Great. I couldn't believe her even if I tried. Mannequins that are alive, that's just ridiculous. So I asked what happens if they get you. She shot me a look and gestured to follow her down to the floor level. Once we got down there, I saw rows and rows of the mannequins all lined up in semicircles. "It makes it easier to patrol the areas like this," she said. "How many mannequins are there?" I asked curiously, because the whole floor was covered in the creepy plastic things. "About 2,000 mannequins," she replied quickly. I gawked at the answer. She fumbled in her pocket and pulled out a keychain and found the correct keys. She opened the door to a dark room and she flicked a switch. I felt shivers run down my spine as I saw from across the room a mannequin that looked exactly like me, just sitting in the fetal position. I panicked a bit at the uncanny resemblance I had on me, but held it in. Abby, why is that mannequin locked up?" I asked, puzzled. Abby replied by bringing out a flashlight and turning the light off and shining a light on the mannequin. I looked back in shock, seeing the mannequin had glowing purple lines where the joints are, and a bright purple mix with blue and red tribal paint, all on its face with gray lines around the breast, painted in a zigzag. "What the hell is that? What are they?" I exclaimed, trying to get a closer look. I got closer to the glass, and as soon as my hand touched the glass, the mannequin peered its head up and gave me a grin. I jumped back, tripping over my feet, landing with a loud thud. "What the hell, Abby? What is this?" I protested in fear. "Those are the things we're going to be having to look out for. Or they are somehow easier to spot with a black light, but under normal lights, it's nearly impossible to tell the difference between them." Or what? What were you going to say?" She shows me another cage. This time stood a dismantled mannequin on the floor, body parts flayed around the room. Or you end up like him. Who is that? That's Andrew. He got jumped by them, and, well, you see what they can do to you. Never let them surround you, and always have your pistol ready. I looked at Abby, and then back at the mannequin that was once known as Andrew. What have I gotten myself into? I thought to myself. We exited the room and went back to the office. Abby sat down and asked if I had any questions. I asked how to take them down, and she replied that a shot or a hard hit towards the head or chest normally always does the trick. I nodded in acceptance and asked how many are usually down there. And like clockwork, she replied, "Usually we deal with 1 or 2 at most, but sometimes, unluckily like Andrew, you can get jumped by 7. I looked at Abby and down at the floor, contemplating. She noticed my expression and gave a reading nod that I could handle this. I half smiled back at her, shaking the uncanny feeling of me seeing that mannequin that looked just like me. That thing creeped me out the most. Will I turn into one of those if I'm not careful? I kept those thoughts to myself. How often do I need to do a perimeter check? She replied, once every 2 hours, so 6 during your entire shift. Abby got up from her chair and headed towards some lockers where she pulled out a flashlight and spare pistol and handed them towards me, as well as a radio. Since tonight's your first shift, I'll help you out and guide you. We both got up and headed out for our rounds around the warehouse, our torches at the mannequins, when Abby grabbed my hand and told me to wait. Her hands felt off, but I ignored it. She pointed out that if we both stayed still, that we could hear the scuttling noises coming down the alleys we're in. She quickly switched her black light on and the room was illuminated by a dark purple hue. We scanned the mannequins with the light shine onto one of its bright patterns was revealed, and suddenly, as an animal that had been caught in mid-action, it leapt forward towards Abby, bearing its claws out. Abby quickly got out and shot the thing in the head. The mannequin's head landed with a thump, and its body fell apart. I was in shock, when suddenly we heard more scuttling coming from further down. Your turn, Abby proclaimed. I quickly grabbed my light and gun, ready, when suddenly the scuttering got closer. As I turned around, I saw a female mannequin standing right behind me. I panicked and dropped my light, causing it to be dark. I ducked under the table that was closest to me, and in a few seconds I heard gunshots ringing through. Abby had taken out the female mannequin. She found me under the table, hurtled in a ball, and laughed. Don't worry, I was nervous wreck too on my first day. You'll get used to it, trust me. As she spoke to me, I noticed that her eyes were glazy and dark, thinking that it might be just a trick of the light. I just nodded and got my flashlight, and we finished the rest of the patrol. Since it was my first day, I was told many things about this place, what they do during the day, their meanings at night. And finally, I was finished with my shift. I packed my things and waved Abby goodbye. When I walked out the door, I was greeted by the man who had picked me up in the black sedan. He looked at me and gestured for me to get in. I hopped in and we drove towards my house. Hey, I never got your name. Ivan. Well, it's nice to meet you, Ivan, and thank you. Soon, I dozed off into a sleep, and the next minute I was home. I got out and thanked Ivan for the lift as he left. As soon as I entered the house, I got a message from an unknown number. It read, "Tomorrow's pickup time will be 5 p.m. Please wait outside 10 minutes before." I looked at it thinking it was Ivan. I looked at the time and thought it was best that I get to bed. The following 5 weeks went without incident. I got better at detecting these creatures and Abby was proud of the improvement. The money I received helped my mother substantially and her health was improving. That all changed, however, on my 20th week working alone. The day started as normal with Ivan picking me up, and I headed towards our place as I fell asleep once again. I headed towards the building and got up and saw Abby there. Apparently she told me there was a recent spike in creature sighting and worried, so she wanted to help me out tonight. I gladly nodded, not questioning the legitimacy. But hey, great company would be nice. It does get lonely working these late shifts. We headed towards the locker, and Abby handed me my flashlight and pistol and waited for our first round of patrol. As the hours got closer, we prepared our gear and headed down to the floor. We headed down, and Abby suggested that we split up and take 2 aisles to get more ground quickly. I agreed, and we split down our separate aisles. As I was about to finish my aisle, I heard a scuttling noise. I looked around and saw nothing when my light started to flicker. Panicking, I gave it the old age trick of hitting it until it worked. Eventually it shone again, and as I faced it up, I screamed in absolute terror as one of the mannequins was only 10 feet away from me. I shined my blacklight on it and sighed in relief that it was only a normal mannequin. But the oddest thing is that it looked so much like Abby. I crept closer to the Abby look-alike when suddenly it turned its head and started to full-on sprint at me. Panicking, I grabbed my pistol and fired a few shots at it. I know I got that thing when I realized that my bullets, they were blank. I feared for my life as I threw the pistol at the mannequin and bolted towards the stairs. But as soon as I got near them, there was at least 22 other mannequins blocking my path. I heard manic laughter and turned around to see Abby, the look-alike mannequin, staring at me. I shined my blacklight at her, which revealed fiery red markings adorning her body and markings up her back. She pointed a finger and 4 of the other mannequins jumped on me with the clicking of her finger. They tore my clothes off, leaving me bare. I yelled out for her to stop, but she just smiled. I heard a strange noise when suddenly, like plastic rubber against plastic, I looked down to see my legs were turning to plastic, and then they let me go. I fell to the ground, the plastic creeping up towards me. My hands got stiff and I couldn't move. Abby then ordered them to throw me into the cage with the other mannequin, but somehow I managed to get past them and run. She then closed the gate and ordered the mannequins to leave. I sat, stuck in my position for God knows how long, until I learned to move my joints. It took me a while to learn how to move my face, but eventually I could even walk. I have to escape. I just need to find a way to escape. I heard chatter and a noise coming towards the door, and I decided to sit down in the fetal position. That's when I looked up and saw myself staring at me. I smiled, and she flew backwards and tripped. Realizing that this was a loop, I planned my escape. I waited in that dark room for at least 3 months when I heard the room's doors open and Abby alongside 4 other mannequins with my plastic body beside them. That's when I heard the cage unlock. I bolted for the exit and threw myself through the staff room. Here, I found this computer that I'm typing on currently. I don't know how long I have. I can hear them banging at the door. So here's my warning. Don't ever take the offer of being a night guard at this warehouse, or you'll end up in a fate similar to mine, or even far worse.